we're going to get started now, and we're going to start looking at a post-mortem on free-to-play game design. And Julian here is going to take us through his journey with skiing Fred. So, over to you.
Hi guys, thank you for being here, and I'd like to start by thanking also the Casual Connect board and Juan Grill for making it possible for me to be here. Today's talk is going to be not just about skiing Fred itself, but also about our experiences with the freemium model over the last few years. So, first of all, what's a developer? We are just a fairly small development studio based in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. We all come from a lifetime of working in video games, and a good portion of our experience is as employees. And back in 2010, we decided to go full indie, take on the adventure. And ever since, we've chased the dream of being indie developers. It's been quite a struggle, and we had quite a few things to learn ever since. One of the things that defines our mentality and strategy is to try to have our games published everywhere it's possible. That's why one of the reasons we are using Unity, aside from the cool relationship we have with them. So we already had games published, of course, on iOS and Android. We even published on Kindle, BlackBerry, on Chrome Web Store. We have plans to publish on we have just today been published on a PDF Shield. You'll probably find us on Tegra Zone. That's pretty cool. About our games, any of you guys ever heard of RunningFred? I'd like to see a hand. No? Yay, 2 people. Awesome. So we began back in 2010 by launching Psychoman. It's a hardcore puzzler game. It was a prepaid app, and it didn't work so well. That's when we first found out that there isn't a direct relationship between the level of production of a game and its actual app performance. Then we made a complete 160 turnaround and went to Falling Fred, which is a completely casualized game. It's a freemium app, and that one performed really well once we actually made it into a free app. It performed rather poorly while it was paid, and then improved very rapidly. Then, just having this success, we made the first sequel in the Fred series, which was RunningFred. And what happened with RunningFred? We had this very basic prequel, Falling Fred, which did fairly well. It had several million users. It had certain in-app purchases, but it was not conceived as a game to monetize as a freemium app. So we wanted to take all of our experiences when it came to monetization into a bigger game, into a nicer game, and something that we felt was missing in the App Store. So we set out to make this kind of a 3D action platformer game at the time when there were no endless runners. So we didn't set out to do it because there were no endless runners when we began making RunningFred. It was quite an effort. It was developed by just myself and 2 other guys over a period of 8 months. It was one insane sprint, and it was not without its difficulties. Whether to publish it or not as free-to-play was still an argument at that point. This is back in February 2012. And it wasn't the same context as we find ourselves today. We had a number of free apps in top grossing listings in the App Store, but it wasn't like the scenario we have today in which 50 out of 50 apps are free to play. In the end, we took the right choice and made it a free to play. The game is not an endless runner. This is an author level game, and it's a platformer game. It has small survival component, which was not the core idea. It actually was a later addition to the game. We used this single and a half currency in which we had this, of course, virtual currency, and some lower denomination currencies we used to pretty much guide the players around all the levels, which are quite complex and have this high replay value. The game had quite a positive following. We amassed, I think it may be a bit higher by now, some 370,000 active Facebook followers, which we keep engaged by means of contests. We recently had this Draw a Fred contest. Kids can be quite creative and disturbing. Some of their drawings are quite scary, I have to say. We also have these giveaways. There's this cheat console which we use, a secret, to give things to users without to compensate them for if they have a problem with a purchase or they lost something. This is a way to give some sort of customer care. It works really well and keeps people happy. We have these special promotions, which are like our daily offers. So we usually have this pretty big virtual asset inventory. You can always get something, but with a little bit of a discount every day. You just have to check it daily. That works quite well. And most importantly, we use these polls to make sure that we have an idea to make certain decisions. We, for instance, made this poll whether to include or not a female character on RunningFred. And unsurprisingly, no, they prefer like this skin for Goku. Crazy stuff. The game had a quite broad following. Today it's well over 17 million unique users, and the number of sessions is really quite insane. What's worth noticing about when comparing both iOS and Android is that while the Android version has a slightly shorter lifespan, it has way more users. We found that Android somehow viralizes way better. For some reason, it does. We didn't just launch the game and let it die. Over time, we've included new game modes, new levels, lots of new characters, new game modes, again, just to make sure that's 6, new powers, and the game has changed and evolved quite a lot ever since we launched it, because we found it worthwhile to grow it and find exactly what kind of experience players are willing to pay for. So we had this very good experience with RunningFred, followed by RunningFred, which was twice the effort. So we set out to make Skiing Fred. By the time we began with this idea, there was already significant number of endless runners in the store. So we knew it would have to be really awesome, really special, really big, and pretty much over the top. It would have to be bloodier, it would have to be messier, and it would have to feel chaotic. So we went ahead and did it. We hired more people and created this game over a lapse of 9 months. It was really a bit more because we added some more stuff to it. To improve conversion, we used this dual currency system that did help a little bit. As you can see, we used exactly twice the effort in terms of resources. Just a bit more of time, but twice as many people over just a similar scope of a project. And we have some scope creeping issues. What went right about Skiing Fred? One of our first concerns when it came to creating this game is we need to have this huge variety of a track. The game has to be huge in terms of diversity, but it has to make sense. It has to be interesting. It has to pose interesting challenges for players. So it cannot be completely procedural. It cannot be fully randomized. It has to have some sort of internal cohesion. So one of our developers created this amazing track creation tool that makes just little chunks of a track and adds these special elements that lets you create special situations for the player. And it has such a broad library of those that it looks randomized when it's not. And it looks randomized and cool at the same time. So we had the best of both worlds, author level quality and lots of variety. That was really one of our best assets. Something that we had a strong emphasis into was to have a solid inventory. We need to have lots of things to offer, both in terms of pricing and in terms of variety. We have lots of hats, we have lots of characters. You can customize pretty much everything in the game to your leisure. But most importantly, we have a very broad stock of purchases for all spending types. We have quite a good experience with the $100 purchase. Actually, our main source of income is with the $100 purchases, followed by the $2 option. It's quite surprising for us. as I mentioned before, one of the main changes in the conversion philosophies we made was to implement this dual currency system. In RunningFred, you only had this single currency, this gold coins, which you collected all the time. But we felt that that made it a bit annoying for players who were not willing to pay ever, and that might just stop them from spending more time and eventually viralizing the game, just communicating their interests to someone else. So to make this transition somewhat better, we segregated freemium, two premium items using two currencies. That allowed us to make better decisions when it came to giving prices to things. So if you find this item which you like, you can know right away if you are supposed to be able to earn it by grinding a little bit, or you're supposed to pay for it. This separation is quite positive. It's quite annoying to start grinding for something and after hours spent realizing that you will not ever get to it. It's like when you do the math and realize that spend 2 hours and the total is 20 hours, you will stop playing right there. So that's a way to avoid frustration on free riders. And also this lets us be more generous with the soft currency. We have a large stock of cool items we can just give away for free. You can be entertained and have new stuff all the time. Every time you play, you get something new, something different, and it's an asset. It's not just a bunch of coins. You have a new hat, a new snowboard, something new is going on, and it's always worth coming back. As you can see in this comparison, the conversion rate did improve a little bit with the dual currency. This wasn't exactly the huge difference we were expecting. We expected to have just twice as much. In the end, it was just over like 15% of a difference in conversion rate, which was good. It was worth the effort, but again, we were expecting way more. We were very concerned about giving the game properly solid tools to viralize. So we came up with this massive co-op missions that lets players band together with a common goal. So we thought of the mob challenges. This is basically a large co-op mission. You have this common goal of, for instance, keeping in the air for 30 seconds or so, and but a large number of people have to qualify for doing this. Thousands of people. So you can do your part, but you need more friends to help you out, and this actually creates lots of interest on all of your friends who call their friends in turn, and this really builds up a lot of interest. When the mob ends, either all players or no players win the reward, but you have to have participated and qualified. So we found that the mob challenges do enhance replay value because these challenges usually come together with a new set of rules that add new light to the mechanic you already knew. It creates an appointment because you have to wait until there is a mob available, and you have to wait again until it's done to get your prize. And of course, it contributes to viralization. We did spend a lot of time and effort integrating lots of native APIs. iCloud Game Center and Facebook on iOS really help feel players that the game is made for their device and not just as a cheap port. And we did the same with Android. That worked really well, except when we started working on this game, there was a certain number of freemium apps, and there was a certain number of freemium runners. By the time we launched, there was a huge amount, and that affected our mindshare. We had this large following of players. We have this ability to push our game, to push our app. There are so many games which fall under the same category that it's very difficult to get a very solid mindshare. So while the game did well, it underperformed RunningFred, which was a game with less of a budget. was an interesting revelation for us. Something that we absolutely screwed up is that we were supposed to launch during winter, during US winter. We missed that date by several months and paid the price. If we launched a winter-themed game in spring, that didn't help the sales. The game is, guys, I have just lost my, I just lost power here. My apologies, guys. So, to go on, this game is fairly ambitious, and it makes a huge lot of, takes a lot of your device, and it has to work on low-end devices such as iPod Touch 4th generation. It has to look beautiful on iPhone 5. That's a huge gap of performance. In the end, we preferred looking awesome to running smoothly on a fairly old device, which, even though it has it has a significant user base. It will come back any moment now. Let's see. So even though the oldest devices still have some presence, in order to properly viralize, you have to look new, you have to look awesome. And if you bear with me a few seconds, I'll be able to go on.
Question.
Sure, we have time for that.
It's for the.
Hello?
So you mentioned the dual currency. You had a soft currency and hard currency, right? How did you segment the items that are purchasable only with the hard currency versus the ones that can be earned with the soft currency? What line did you draw for that?
You say in terms of decide.
So you had a currency where you can just earn by playing more, right? And then you had a currency, I guess, that you have to pay with real money to buy. So the items that you can buy with your soft currency, how are they different from the items you can buy only with real money? I guess what's extra? What's the better thing about those items that you can buy with
what
only
we usually do is have this boat list. First, we do this internal revision of it, and then we have some friends, and we expanded the sample, and we get this boat where each item gets some points. And based on the points on different categories, we split them around to make sure that we have a proper population of items across both free and premium apps. I don't know if that answers your question.
So, I mean, if the value is the same, then why would
it's not the same value. It's not.
So the better items.
It's arbitrary, but it's not the same.
Okay.
Yes.
So you the video. Oh, I have to talk into this.
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't understand your point when you're saying low end versus high end. Did you guys make the mistake of going
We made the mistake
for the
of
low
trying
end or
to
for the high end?
be everywhere at once.
So you should have just gone for the high end instead?
At least not going so much for the low end.
So you should have devoted more time to high end and a little less to low end.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had to spend a lot of time trying to get again, to run again and not to crash.
Right.
Touch. And it runs fairly well, but it's for a speeding game, it's not the best of experiences. So the last thing I had like 2 slides left before it went down. The game itself met its development goals, which means that we set out to make this awesome endless runner, and it did. But well, again, you know that that's overly populated by now. We did increase too much the value of the production when we should have known that higher production does not mean higher income. Everyone knows that, but we had a success before, went on that direction, and well, we fell for the trap. And from now on, what should we do? And what we feel that developers should do is to improve on their monetization schemes. It's like coin grinding doesn't do it anymore. It's like this is a discussion I've been having with quite a few developers. When a player starts with your game, starts its relationship, and you right away show it any kind of coins they have to go through and start picking up, they already know where this is going. They know what's going to happen. They know how and will they be monetized. And in many instances, that's a bad thing, because they already limit the level of interest they will take in your game. They already limit the level of engagement they will get with it. And in general, they will just drop out much faster. All right? Think of it as if you had a friend of yours who is a salesman, and in a just informal discussion about anything, he starts pitching you about something. You stop him right there, and do not let him go on. So you have to be subtler, you have to be smarter. That's on the monetization side, it just keeps dropping out. It's not going to work. Yeah. So on the other hand, you have to choose your battles a bit better. Do not attack the most overly exploited subsegment on an already overly exploited segment. I mean, we went for the hardest segment on a already hard segment. It's like of all the freemium maps, the runners are the most fished on, the most attacked, most exploited. So while we were fortunate enough to do well, we could have done a lot better had we done something else with the same effort. That's something worthwhile. So mostly is improve your monetization scheme, be smart, and pick your battles. That's how I could do it.
I think that's a great point. So, are there any further questions?
One of the things that you mentioned is that you released it at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Are you sure that that had an impact? I mean, how do you know?
How do you know? It's a solid assumption, we think.
Because in an overfished market like the runners, before iOS really started putting the hammer down on runners, where you no longer can even say runner, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that, I don't know what the numbers look like for runners in general. So it might have done better, it might not have done. I don't know. So I'm always questioning kind of seasonal stuff, because did you have a huge pickup in Australia where it was winter?
Well, our main markets are, of course, US, UK, and Canada, just like everybody else. We, again, strongly suspect that it had something to do. The degree of that is open to speculation, but it has something to do. About seasonal events, that's, again, depending on what kind of strategy do you have in mind. For instance, we tend to avoid at all times launching on Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we do that? Everyone else launching their games at that point, especially the big players, you don't stand a chance of competing against them. Again, we choose not to fight that battle, and we try to, take the winter season. That was one of our main, entry points, and we missed it. Perhaps it wasn't as important as we think it is. We still think it was really important.
One more question was about the co-op mode, the massive co-op, the mob challenge. That is often integrated into games, but a big problem is kind of players just uninstalling and duplicating accounts, which would also, to contribute to, because they just want to contribute. What was your qualification like? Was it just a massive investment in time or skill?
We use just Facebook login for that, and if you care enough to actually engage in that activity, it's all Twitter. We don't really do any especially strong checkings on authenticity. Was that your question?
Yeah. I find that there's some data to suggest that that type of behavior, where you just duplicate accounts for some secondary purpose, drives down premium currency purchases, because people tend to not be attached to their accounts in that case. They're attached to some goal, and it's a social event, but they don't then follow your monetization path. They have no incentive to do so, or less of an incentive even, because it's just account 6 now. And so it was just an interesting question, kind of because I don't see a lot of people here presenting.
We know there is such behavior, but we don't take really strong measures against it.
Okay.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually. The how do we deal with people whose use of social media is more transient? And that's a very valid question, which I suspect needs more investigation.
Yeah.
Any last questions? One last time.
So actually, there's a follow-up question to the
Yeah.
mob challenges.
Sure.
First question is, how many of these did you do within which time? I mean, did you do one a month? These mob challenges.
No, this was something we did 2 or 3 times a week.
2 or 3 times a week. So different
Yes.
challenge.
Yes.
Okay, okay. The second question is regarding your the falling, I guess, RunningFred. Before, when you transitioned from RunningFred to SkiingFred, you mentioned that you still have people updating and doing enhancements on RunningFred. How much bandwidth of the original team has to stay back to work on a project that has released versus work on the new project?
Something between 30 and 50%. It's it takes a lot of effort. So yeah, sometimes for a short period it's even 100%, but it's only a matter of days.
And actually, it made me think, as we've been talking through, particularly the seasonal question and as you said, the differences between the two products. I mean, is there a hypothesis that maybe it's the skiing that was potentially not as appealing? I mean, I'm just wondering. Is it a genre thing? Was that cutting an audience too far down its segment? Maybe.
That's entirely possible. We felt that while snowboarding and skiing might not be like main feature theme, at least at present, moving the franchise towards a more sports-like orientation probably did help a lot. We feel that the game is much stronger as it is today because of many features, and it did much better than it would have if we had done just another runner. I mean, had we done a RunningFred 2, I don't think that would have worked.
No, and I think you're right. I'm not actually entirely serious. I don't necessarily think that snowboarding's a bad brand, but it's just a question.
Maybe something else.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you. So it seemed like one of your points was that a larger team didn't necessarily monetize better, or didn't give a better return. Does that mean that your studio is going to focus on slightly smaller teams from now on, or are you going to go with a different
I
model?
could put it to you this way. Had we launched SkiingFred instead of RunningFred last year, we would have done much, much better. It's like... with a smaller team? No, with a new team. What I mean is that it's harder now. So the game is more able to produce income. It's better. It's a better game. It's a bigger game. And it creates a bigger revenue per user. It's more attractive. It's more competitive. But the context is harder. That's a good portion of the issue. There are way more apps that compete with it that back when we launched RunningFred.
So bigger teams.
Bigger teams help, but that depends on exactly what are you trying to do. Again, bigger doesn't mean better.
So on that note, I will thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much for that. That was excellent.
Thank you, guys.